Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast, episode 178. So if you are, let me just get my, try and get my head around where we are in the year. I think,
is it February yet?
Yeah, if you are listening on the day we release, you're listening right at the end of January. It's about the 20th, Friday, the 26th of January, I think, today. So we're at the end of the first month of the year, and we're joined by a very special guest who I will introduce you to in a minute, all the way from Ohio in the USA. So they've freed up some time to speak to us today. So that's fantastic. But before I introduce our guest today, we will connect with my usual co-host, Mr. Peter Lant, who is having a fabulous day. He nearly lost his pen. He's found his pen. He's happy now. How are you doing, Pete?
I'm having a domestic day, shall we say? You know when just think like everything starts to go wrong at once. Not like nothing major, just niggling it like a leaky boiler and stuff like that. It's just like, for God's sake, I've got to sort that out, and I've got to wait for a plumber, and I've got to do this and I've got to do that. So I'm having that sort of day. But anyway, on a more positive note, well, it's also the day that you talk to your clients about as well, and you're like, don't worry, these days happen. But when you're in them, you're like, why me? But anyway, the day this goes out, I'll be in Sheffield tomorrow for the Strongman. I don't know if it's Ultimate Strongman, Britain's Strongest Man, whichever one it is. I don't know.
I think that's one of the Giants Live ones, isn't it? I think
it is. Yeah. Sean got us it for. Did she get us it for my birthday or Christmas? She got us it for something ages ago. She just went, "Oh, we're going to Sheffield in January." I was like, "Brilliant."
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's Britain's Strongest Man with Giants Live. So that'll be fantastic.
Yeah, that'll be good. That. And what's his name? It's Paul Smith's hometown, isn't it? So.
Sheffield, yeah. Paul Smith, yeah. No, that'll be brilliant. That'll be great.
I'm looking forward to that tomorrow.
Okay. Brilliant. And we are joined by Mark Valenti, like I said, from Ohio in the USA. It's 3:00 in the afternoon for us. It's 10:00 in the morning for him. How are you doing, Mark? Are you all right?
Wonderful. I'm glad to be on the show, guys. I appreciate it.
Excellent. No, it's great to meet you, Mark. And I know I follow Mark on Instagram, and he also has a gym, Blind Dog Strong, which is a fantastic name. We got to find out on the podcast the origins of the name of the gym, Blind Dog Strong. But he's in Vermillion in Ohio in the USA, joining us, and we're going to kind of find out all about Mark. I do follow him. I mean, you see him. I mean, one thing I will say, I love your videos, Mark, online, because they're often black and white. They're kind of grainy. You look like a kind of, I suppose, like over here, we think of like an American kind of mountain man, kind of big beard and the kind of lumberjack type shirt, down in a basement, deadlifting heavy stuff. And I'm really looking forward to finding out all about you. I've got a few notes down in terms of, some of the things you've done in the past, and we'll kind of get to that, I'm sure, as we talk. But I suppose probably the first thing is it'd be really good, because we've not met before. We've obviously been connected on social media, but it'd be really good to know a bit about kind of you, a bit about your background, your career in strength, and what you've done in terms of strength. And then also, I suppose, from a coaching point of view and a business point of view, find out about how you got involved in that. So really just, I suppose, if you take it away from wherever you want to, and then we'll kind of dip in and ask questions as we go. And I'm sure we'll go down a few rabbit holes and go into detail on certain things as we go, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I started off, playing sports here in the States, as a kid, soccer, swimming, youth football, that kind of stuff, and got into weightlifting and weight training about 12 years old. I think, I was a kid who grew up in the 80s. And I think, most everybody that I grew up with was inspired by Arnold. I think I was more inspired by the Road Warriors, who were pro wrestlers back then. So, everyone wanted to look like Arnold, but I wanted to look like Hawk and Animal from the Road Warriors. So
I was going to say, they then went on to become like the Legion of Doom, didn't they?
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So I used to watch the older, WWF, as it were, back in the 80s. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, those were my inspirations growing up, and along with my uncle Butch, who was an old school weightlifter guy, and started when I was 12 years old, and immediately saw that how it helped my athletics. And I was wrestling and playing football, and then I got into track and field and started throwing the shot and discus and fell in love with that. Went off to college and was going to be on the track team, and well, actually, right before I went off to college, I got into amateur Highland Games athletes, heavy events, and started competing in that, caber toss and weight throw and hammer throw. I went off to college to join the track and field team. They were kind of, not great with the scholarship money. So I said, well, I could go here to college and basically, compete for free, or I could turn pro in the Highland Games and actually make some money doing this stuff. So I did that and ended up having a nice long career. I threw professionally for 18 years, and that was the best job I ever had in my life. It was just getting to travel around North America mostly with your buddies every weekend, and they actually paid you for it.
So I mean, I suppose because we've had Dan John on quite a few times before, and I know he's done some Highland Games in the past, and you mentioned discus as well, and hammer throwing and things, and he's obviously discus. But in terms of Highland Games, I mean, over here I presume the Highland Games originated in Scotland, in Scotland, in the Highlands. And is it a big thing in America, or is it very niche, or to actually be able to kind of get paid for it and to make money doing it? I mean, back then and now, is Highland Games something that's quite popular in the States, I suppose?
Yeah, so in Scotland, it's almost all professional. I don't know if they have very much amateur athletics at all. In the States, when I first came up, there was an amateur class and a professional class, and now you have amateur ABCs and women's competitions. And but I think most people that I threw with, at least, will agree that I kind of came up in the golden age of Highland Games, where the professional class was the main show, the main draw. We made a lot of money doing it. I mean, it obviously wasn't like playing professional basketball or something, but able to pay my bills with it. And I competed every weekend or every other weekend from mid-April till Halloween every year. And you were just on the road continuously, Canada, United States. I know that a lot of the guys took trips over to Scotland. I never actually did do that. But it was a great sport, and I got to meet so many amazing people along the way, and guys like, I know you've had Magnus Magnusson on the show, and I got to meet him, and Peter Goodmanson from Iceland, and just some fantastic athletes. And it was a great way to spend my 20s and 30s, getting to travel.
How much toll does that take on your body? Because and like, how does Highland Games compare to Strongman sort of thing? You see, because you don't do Strongman every weekend, do you? But if you're doing Highland Games every single weekend, I mean, obviously you can't be doing max effort every weekend, can you? So how did you manage that?
Yeah, I actually got into Strongman after Highland Games, but it was it was. I guess I tell people that I'm 5'11". At my biggest, I was 300 pounds, 310 pounds, but I was never the biggest or the strongest or the fastest guy, but I was very, very durable. And I think that's what saw me through all the years. I never had a major injury in the sport, which was unheard of. A lot of the guys I competed with had different surgeries, and because you are competing every weekend, and there is money on the line, so there's no off week. So you're constantly trying to throw far, just so you got the most money when you walked out the door. I was lucky enough to grow up 2 hours north of Westside Barbell, and got to go down and hang out at Westside Barbell and talk to Louie Simmons. And he really helped put together and helped me put together a program that kept me at my absolute strongest and kept me pretty much injury free going in. So that max effort, dynamic effort combination that is conjugate really worked well for me through Highland Games. And I was able to, still train heavy pretty much year round, even when I was in season.
It's funny.
Yeah, sorry,
it's
Pete.
funny, no, it's a facetious comment, but it's. I was going to say it's funny, isn't it, when you talk about injuries and that, and people are like, "Oh, I'm injured, I can't do that," and you go, "Right, okay, here's $1,000 or whatever." They go, "Oh, okay, it's gone now."
The one injury I had was a horrible sprained ankle. I got from a practice, and I got it 3 or 4 days before the Wisconsin Highland Games, which was a 2-day event. It was a lot of money on the line, and it was towards the end of the season. And, there just wasn't any way I was going to be able to miss it. So I just, taped that ankle up as tight as I could and went out and competed. And it just wasn't a choice. You wanted the money, you had to go. So
Yeah.
when the money's on the line, you just got to make it happen.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I spoke to someone the other day who, and I'm just aware you mentioned something and we haven't used it for a little while, but I just went and got the acronym hammer because someone came to me, it was Paul Field actually said, you need to get the acronym hammer out more because we have conversations, and like we're having a lovely conversation, and you'll mention a word or a phrase and it will go over many people's heads, and or they'll just be a bit confused. So I'm bringing the acronym hammer back, and I'm going to ask you, if possible, Mark, just to explain or just to mention. You mentioned Louie Simmons, you mentioned Westside Barbell, and you mentioned the conjugate method. Can you just kind of give us a brief kind of overlay or a bird's eye view of what that is, just for the listeners, if that's okay?
Yeah, absolutely. You'll hear people say, they train Westside. I guess it's not exactly the way you want to put it. It's you're training with the conjugate method. They say you don't really train Westside unless you trained at Westside. And I can give you a little background on that. When after I got into the conjugate method and started going down and making trips to Westside, I would look at it and go, wow, this doesn't look like anything I read. But those guys were so far advanced and so deep into it, they were experimenting. But just a basic rundown of it is you have 2 max effort days a week. So you have an upper body and a lower body max effort day where you're training a variant of the bench, squat, or deadlift. And you're training it at 90% of your max, so maybe instead of doing a deadlift, I'm doing a slightly elevated deadlift or a deficit deadlift or a deadlift versus bands. And I'm taking that 90% and I'm trying to bump it up every time I get back to that lift. Maybe I'm just going 5 pounds heavier than I did last time when maybe I could handle 20 pounds heavier, but I'm just constantly bumping up those 90%. And then on the 2 other days later in the week, you have the dynamic effort method days where you are doing a box squat, maybe a speed deadlift, and a speed bench. So now you're working at 50 to 60% of your max, and you're just moving that barbell as absolutely fast as you can. Very ballistic. It worked really well with my Highland Games because it's a very explosive event, and you're throwing the stone, you're throwing the weights, you're trying to be as fast as possible. So you had this very heavy max day where you're really straining hard, and then the 2 lighter, faster days where you're straining very hard as well, but you're straining in a different way to move the bar as quickly as possible. So it really worked well for throwing.
And do you
How did
yeah,
that
sorry, go ahead.
how did that did it affect your mobility at all? Because listening to Dan John talk about Highland Games, and I never really thought of this before, but you know how, like, obviously around different parts of the world, people have got different hip structures and all of this sort of stuff. So you've obviously got your Eastern Europeans who can get down into the deep squat. That's why they win all the Olympic, like, lifting and all that sort of stuff. But then Highland Games is all kind of from hinging, isn't it? Because you've got your Celtic hip. So, you know, your average Celt, and this isn't trying to offend your average Celt. This is actually an anthropological thing, isn't it? But the hips are more designed for power above parallel rather than power from below parallel. That's I remember Dan John talking about that. So did you train mobility as well, or did you just train like out and out pure brute strength?
So yeah, that's a great observation. Highland Games is very heavily hinge dominated. It's a hinge sport. The caber's a hinge. The weight for height's a hinge. It's you're not into those deep squats. So I spent a lot of time box squatting, at about parallel, you know, give or take. So yeah, it's a great observation. Now, as far as mobility, I was lucky enough, like I said, I was very durable, and I never paid attention to mobility training. I mean, hell, when I first started, foam rollers weren't even a thing, you know. So I never spent much time on mobility until later when I got into Strongfirst, actually, and then it became, you know, first and foremost in my training, just to make sure that I can continue to do this, you know, as long as I want to do it. But no, when I was competing, I just kind of relied on the fact that I was durable, and it just wasn't thought of as much as it is nowadays. I wish it would have been. I'd be in better health than I am now.
So just another question, Mark, is you're obviously training, so you were going down to Westside, you were training there, you know, Louie Simmons and that sort of thing. You were competing in Highland Games. Did you ever get tempted to, or did you ever compete in powerlifting? Did you ever do like a powerlifting meet or you know, get into powerlifting more? Because obviously that's what Westside was kind of predominantly for, and what they were known for. I mean, did you compete in powerlifting at all?
That's one sport I never really actually did in a competition setting. I didn't get to train at Westside. I got to go down and observe. So Louie loved athletes. He wanted people to kind of buy into his system that weren't powerlifters, because he believed it could work for all these other disciplines. So it was always me and Kerry Overfelt, who was another Highland Games pro that would go down there, and he loved us. And he wanted to know how the system was working for us. So he would invite us down, and we would get to observe. But I never actually did the 3 lifts in powerlifting competitions, you know. So I thought about doing that. I kind of did a bunch of stuff when I got done with Highland Games, and that was one of the things I considered. But I just never really got the opportunity to do it. I never really trained for a full 3 event meet.
Because I suppose really, because I know in Strongman, we'll move into Strongman, I suppose, as well. But with Strongman, there's never, you know, obviously bench press in powerlifting, there's not really any need for a kind of a horizontal push in Strongman, is it? It's overhead strength. So most of the strongmen, you know, like you say, we've had Magnus on, we've had Donna Moore, 3 times world's strongest woman, we've had Becca Roberts, who's the current world's strongest woman on, but they don't really ever need to train a bench press. It's all kind of overhead strength and more dynamic strength and more kind of functional strength, for the want of a better word. So yeah, so I suppose you never really needed to train that bench press strength, especially for Highland Games, is kind of not.
Dave Whitley commented on that on a video I saw as well. He was talking about he got some help to he said to pass a certification, so I'm assuming we know which one that is, but he was he needed to so he's a performance strongman, obviously, isn't he, and all that, but he was struggling with the bench press. So he had to get and he was 2 months away from the 6-month window to do it after the certification. So he had to get help to get up to the numbers. And this is Dave Whitley. It's like, really?
Yeah.
All numbers are no joke. They're I hadn't bench pressed in years when I took my SFL, and it wasn't a massive number. I think I needed to do maybe 245 or 250, but I was like, hey, I better get a bench out and actually play with this a little bit and do a little bit of training and make sure I can hit those numbers. And pressed in years.
Yeah. So you were, I mean, Mark, how do you mind me asking how old you are at the moment?
I'm 50. I turned 50 in October.
Fantastic. Yeah. So you just turned 50. So you were doing a kind of Highland Games, I think you mentioned, in your 20s and 30s.
I retired 39. 39
okay.
I retired.
Fantastic. And then when did you move into kind of some more strongman type stuff, or did you do that alongside the Highland Games, or was it like you finished Highland Games and you moved into strongman?
I finished Highland Games, went into Masters Strongman, and competed probably 5 or 6 times. Basically what I would do was I would do a competition and just try to qualify for nationals. So I ended up qualifying for nationals 3 times. Only went to the competition once. It was kind of crazy. The one year that I decided to go, the first year, I went and I was coming in as a Masters 240 pound competitor. And when I got there, they didn't have enough competitors to have a class like that. So they just threw me in with the super heavyweights. So I was under 240 pounds. I was all set to go. And then all of a sudden it's me against all these 340 pound guys. So, but it was a good time. We had a great time. It was the same. We were in Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky. And it was actually the same weekend that they were having Muhammad Ali's funeral. So we ended up in a hotel because most of us had booked our hotel months in advance. So we were in this hotel, and it's all these nationally ranked strongman competitors. And then you had Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield and Carl Weathers, and Bill and Hillary Clinton showed up, and the Dalai Lama was there, and the Nation of Islam. So it was the most incredible conglomeration of people you could ever imagine in one hotel for this once in a lifetime U.S. National Strongman Championships at Muhammad Ali's funeral. So I'll never forget that week.
There's got to be a joke in there somewhere. Bill Clinton, Carl Weathers, and the Dalai Lama walk into a hotel bar.
Yeah, it was you know, I'm sitting there at breakfast, and the Secret Service is going back and forth, tracing the route to take Bill and Hillary through. And Carl Weathers is literally sitting next to me, eating his breakfast. And this big Secret Service guy keeps walking by. He looked like Brock Lesnar. And after about the 3rd time he walks by, he walks up to Carl Weathers and the other Secret Service agent standing there. And he says something to Carl Weathers. And they stand up and they do the hand clasp from Predator, and the other Secret takes a picture of it. And the Secret Service guy walks by me, and I kind of pulled him down, and I said, "You just lived the dream of every 12-year-old boy in America."
Oh, that's great. So, so Mark, how did you find the transition from Highland Games to Strongman, or how did you enjoy, Strongman compared to Highland Games? What, were they very similar or very different, or obviously complementary, or was it a totally different skill set that you needed to kind of adopt for Strongman? How did that work?
Yeah, it was I had to, number one, change my training around a little bit, obviously, to get the events in. They complemented each other very well. I mean, I was a good athlete, so I transferred pretty easily. I didn't enjoy it as much. It just, the camaraderie's there, but it's different. The guys that I competed with on the circuit, I think it was more competitive because there was money on the line, and there was a lot of it was more good-natured screwing with each other and having fun that way. It just wasn't the same for me, and I just really couldn't get into it. And I kind of, bounced around doing stuff like that. I got into strongman, and I got into jiu-jitsu, and I was always trying to look for that camaraderie again, and that competitiveness that I had in Highland Games, and I never quite found that in other sports. I ended up going back the same year I competed in Louisville for Strongman Nationals, I actually went over to Iceland and competed in the World Highland Games World Masters Highlands Games Championships over there. And that was great again. You know, I got back into it. A lot of the guys that had retired before me I got to throw with again, guys I hadn't seen in years. Magnus Magnuson was my judge. You know, I mean, it was just, I loved Iceland. I loved the competition. And that was really fun. And it was a nice swan song for me. And I did a couple Masters Highland Games meets after that, and a couple Masters Strongman's competitions after that. But I just never could get that competitive drive back that I used to have.
So when you lifted the Husafell Stone in Iceland, was that on that trip that you were there for the Highland Games? And I suppose the Husafell Stone wasn't part of the Highland Games, was it? Is that was just something you had the opportunity to do because you were there? Yeah.
Yeah, so we went over. It was crazy. I had an injured hip, and I was training for the World Masters Highland Games Championship, and I got some deep tissue therapy done a few days before I left. Actually, no, it was a few weeks before I left, and I got the tissue done. Ended up getting a blood clot in my leg, and I went to a doctor here at the Cleveland Clinic, which is one of the best healthcare providers in the States, and he said, "Hey, look," he goes, "you know, you're going to do what you're going to do. I've never worked on anybody who lifts the kind of things you do. I think you're going to be fine. Go ahead and do it." So I fly over there. Was a little worried about that, you know, but we flew over. And right before we left, Matt Vincent, who he was a professional Highland Games guy, and then he got into his Hate brand gear, which is like a clothing line. He called me up and said, "Hey, you know, I want to do this video of lifting the Husafell when I'm in Iceland, but my knee's fucked up. I can't really do it. Would you want to come up and lift the stone?" I was like, "Absolutely, let's do this." So we fly in. We get there. We met up with Peter Goodmanson, who was a Icelandic shot putter. He kind of gave us directions on how to get to Husafell. We went up there, and what was funny was we found out that the Husafell Stone the day before wasn't in Husafell. They had actually gone up and gotten the Husafell and drove it down to Reykjavik, where I was staying, for Iceland's Strongest Man. So they were competing in Iceland's Strongest Man with the Husafell. They hear that I'm going to be making an attempt on the Husafell Stone. So these guys took the stone 4 hours back to Husafell and dropped it off. I mean, who am I? I'm just some goof from the States coming over to make this lift. And these Icelanders are so amazing that they drive this thing back up there just so I don't miss my attempt to do this. And I didn't tell them to do that. So they just heard that I was going to do it, and they drove it back up there. So after flying in, I think I had been awake for something like 28 hours with, you know, flying overseas and taking the flight and driving all the way up there. But we took an attempt. I was able to pick it up, carry it maybe, I don't know, 75, 100 feet before I dropped it. But there's a video you can find on YouTube. It's through Matt Vincent's channel of me doing it. I think it was called, I'm not sure. You can check his channel, but you can just tell how stoked I was. I was exhausted, but it was just one of the most amazing experiences, lifting and carrying this stone that, you know, every major strongman in the world is lifted, and Vikings and all these other people over the years. And I'm doing it, you know, in front of a glacier, you know, and my wife's there. And it was just amazing. What an incredible.
So how heavy?
There's no pressure as well when they're driven it 4 hours back for you as well. It's like, oh, I've got to pick it up now.
No pressure at all. Here, we're going to drive it back 4 hours. You're going to be on the popular YouTube channel where everyone's watching. And hey, don't screw this up, you know.
I was going to say, were you actually staying in like Reykjavik as well? Were you staying? Yeah. So they could have just left it. They could have left it in the city, and you could have done it there. Too,
right. Yeah. And the day before, Hapthor had carried it and he broke the world record for the distance he had carried it. Then, you know, I get to carry it 75 feet or so, but I didn't care. It was great.
Yeah.
And
So how heavy is the Husafell Stone, just for people who are listening?
it's 419 pounds.
Yeah, because let me do the math on that. 419 divided by 2.2.
So that's just, it's 180.
It's 190. It's 190
190,
kilos.
yeah.
Yeah, because that's what I thought it was 109, around 100. I didn't know if it's 180, 190 kilos. This stone. Yeah.
So
Fantastic.
just to put that in context, when Dave Keown started, so have you heard of David Keown? He calls himself Indiana Stones now. He's in Ireland, and he's been uncovering lots and lots of ancient Irish stones.
Yeah,
because there weren't any on the map at all. And he looked at it and he was like, he looked at it, he thought there must be, because we're Celtic and there must have been traditions in it. And he's been going through the history of it. He's uncovered like 15 of them or something so far. And he's still finding them. But when he started lifting them, he started during lockdown in his back garden. I think he said he had a 90-kilo stone and he was struggling to pick it up. In the very beginning. And now he's put on 20 kilos himself and stuff like that. So 190 kilos is up there, isn't it?
Yeah, because we're gonna get Dave back on, actually, because he's now, like you say, he was on with it. He did an episode with us quite a while ago, but since then he's really gone all in on the stone lifting, and he's been on Irish kind of national TV and lots of national press, and so we'll have him back on.
The ones he's finding in Ireland as well, because I think the Scottish ones, there's lots of like 120 kilos and stuff like that. All the ones in Ireland are like 170 plus. Pretty much all of them, I think. They're massive.
Yeah, because I watched recently, Mark. There was they do like the Magnus Classic in Iceland every year now, and they did a live stream on YouTube. I think on the one, it was just before Christmas. I think it was early December or late November, and they do the Husafell carry around, like, and it's in Husafell, and it's around sort of like
it's a goat.
Yes. Yeah, so you have to walk around it, and then they track the distance that way, and they're walking around, and it's all kind of like turfed up mud and ice, and it's really rugged, So I mean, how did you find it? Because that's one of my things when we had Magnus on the podcast. I would love to get to go over there and watch this Magnus Classic. Maybe next year. I'm looking at it, because you literally get a dozen people watching, because it's so barren. It's like everyone's wearing like ski gear, and like woolly hats and the hoods, and it's freezing. But how did you find the experience of being in Iceland, and the kind of, like you say, the Icelandic people and the Icelandic culture, and just being over there? What was that experience like for you?
So I'm a kid who grew up in the Caribbean a lot. We spent a lot of time bouncing around islands and spending time on the beach, and that's where I thrive, when it's hot in the ocean. But it was the most amazing trip. When we landed, first of all, the scenery is something I couldn't even describe to people. I mean, it's just something you have to see. The landscape is like nothing I'd ever seen before. I have never met a group of people who are as pleasant and as friendly and as helpful as the Icelandic people. I known one person from Iceland before that, and that was Peter, who I always found amazing and wonderful. But the people that I met there were just so kind and just so helpful, and I loved every minute of being there. Like I said, we met Magnus over there. I met Annie Thor's daughter over there, and it was just an amazing experience. And Annie, I saw Annie going into a restaurant that I was going into, and I just followed her in. I'm not a big CrossFit guy, but I always appreciated what she did. And I just kind of tapped her on the shoulder and wanted to say hi. And she happened to be on the phone, and I didn't realize it. I kind of put up my hands like, "Hey, I'm sorry." And she's like, no, let's take a picture. And I mean, it was just amazing, the people there. And it would be, I just recommend people go there any chance they get. It's one of my favorite places on the planet, and even though it's freezing.
Okay, so I suppose we'll move into kind of talking about how you first found out about Strongfirst and how you got involved. Because I know you're Strongfirst Elite as well, which means you hold all of the Strongfirst certifications, and you've kind of passed them all, over the course of a weekend, or the kind of the recertification criteria to become Strongfirst Elite. So I suppose I want to talk about that, and then also, talk about your gym, Blind Dog Strong, and you yourself as a coach, and moving from like an athlete into coaching, and kind of, so there's quite a lot, I suppose, really we can talk about around this. And we may need to get you on for another episode anyway to kind of talk about all this stuff. But yeah, kind of where did you first kind of get involved with Strongfirst?
So I kind of mentioned that, I was really looking for something when I got out of Highland Games. I tried Strongman, I tried Masters Highland Games, I tried Jiu-Jitsu. Nothing really set with me, and I really couldn't get in anything. I used to do a podcast. It, wasn't nearly what you guys do, but I used to do this little podcast, and I was, blessed to have Pavel Masic on at one point. And I was so impressed with Pavel as an athlete, as a coach, as a human being. Just this blend of athlete and stoicism that he had. And we were talking, and I said, what does it take to get your Strongfirst? And at the time I didn't know that there were all these different certifications. I just thought it was the kettlebell one. And I said, what would it take to do that? And, he said it takes some training. It's not easy. And he kind of encouraged me to do it. And, I said, this guy is very inspiring, and I think I'm just going to do it, and I got a hold of Pavel. I signed up for the certification. I got a hold of Pavel, and I said, would you work with me a little bit, on my kettlebell lifts? And he worked with me mostly in the snatch and the get up. I ended up going and taking the SFG1, and I know, like you guys know, that SFG1 it can be rough, and it's a rough, long weekend. But it's absolutely worth it. But I remember telling my wife when I finished the weekend, I said, I'll never do this again. This is crazy. And then I went home and immediately signed up for the SFL and the SFG2. So I went through SFL, went through SFG2. I had Dr. Mike Hartle for SFG1 and SFL. SFG2, I had Annalisa Naldi and Jeremy Layport. So passed all of those. And then I signed up for bodyweight with John Nangam and to test for Elite. And flexible steel all in the same weekend. And it was just, every one of the certifications was an amazing weekend. I met people that spoke to me. They were, you hear that they preached the quiet professional through Strongfirst, and that's what these people were. They were just all pros, and they were all, I always say, they're heavy hitters. They were all heavy hitters. There was nobody at these certifications that were coaching them where I was like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. They were all amazing. And then, I went to Philadelphia, finally got my elite certification with John Ingham. And then October for me was crazy. I got a certified elite the first weekend of October, right after my 50th birthday. Then we went to Phoenix for programming Demystified. So I actually got to see Pavel Totsulin talk, and Fabio Zonin talk, and Hector Gutierrez. And what an amazing experience that was, because now I'm at this seminar, and everybody in there is Strongfirst Elite. They are senior instructors, they're masters instructors, and I'm looking around the room, and there's Doc Hartle, and there's Sven Riegert from Germany, who is just, he's like my hero. I love him to death, and we saw each other across the room, big smile. It's like we knew each other for years. And Annalisa Naldi, who is just, what an amazing woman with the energy to spare. And, I got to meet. I'm blanking on her last name, but Angelique from
Yes, yeah, yeah.
who's fantastic, and I'm forgetting a ton of people, but it was just everyone there from Strongfirst, and when I was in that room with those people, I was like, this is what I want to do. These are the people I want to hang around with. Here's the camaraderie that I had in Highland Games. I'm finding it now within Strongfirst, and there's no slouches. There's no, the fact that you have to perform physically at these certifications to get certified is a game changer, because I've gone through plenty of certifications, CrossFit and NSCA and all these. There's a lot of people there who you look at it and go, has this guy been in a weight room ever? Does this guy practice what he preaches? You don't get that with Strongfirst. You're just, every single person is a juggernaut. They're all heavy hitters. They're all fantastic people. I'm a very introverted kind of guy. I go into a room, I just kind of stay in the back, and I'm just always assuming that I don't want to be bothering people. They're in a conversation, I'm not going to bug them. And everyone was stopping and coming over to say hi to me. Hi, I'm so and so. Who are you? And just, it blew me away. And I tell people all the time about Strongfirst now, and how it's kind of given me a new lease on life as far as training and coaching. Immediately after programming Demystified, I flew out to San Diego on my own dime to work with Coach Hartle for an SFL, and I'm just, especially with the SFL, I'm so into that, and helping people with the barbell, and it's just been great all around. That's kind of a long-winded explanation of my.
No, that's great, because I was just gonna kind of speculate, I suppose, that with your background of the training and all the strength stuff, and the visiting Westside and Louie Simmons things, I would imagine that the barbell certification for you was probably the one that came not most naturally, because it gelled with your background and gelled with your kind of history of training. How did you find the body weight? I'm thinking specifically maybe the pistol squat, and the one arm press up and the pull ups and things like that. I mean, was that the certification that for you was, because we say a lot when we speak to people on here, that often there's one of the certifications that most people, you maybe struggle the most with, you need to train most because you find it most challenging. I mean, was the body weight that one for you, or?
It absolutely was, and I waited. Don't call me a dummy. I waited till I was 50 to take that one, so I could do the old Navy standards. So I only had to do a one-arm push-up. I didn't have to do the one-arm, one leg. And I had to do a pistol to it. I think it was a 12-inch box. And but yeah, that was by far the hardest one for me. Again, though, I was so inspired by that weekend. John Ingham, who is older than I am, and it wasn't like, hey, here's this young kid who's going to demonstrate these exercises for you. He was showing you the pistol and showing you the one-arm push-up. And it's like, geez, like, these guys are legit. They're the real deal. And I've been around the block. I can recognize that when I see it. And so the body weight certification was just amazing. And I learned a ton, and was able to take that back to my students. And I definitely am glad I waited till I was 50 to take the test. But yeah, it was a great certification, and definitely the one I had to train the hardest for.
It's funny because mine's the barbell one. The kettlebell one I did my SFG one 10 years ago, actually. Yeah. And that was when it was double bells as well. Yeah. And I only weighed 63 kilos at the time, and I had to do everything with double 24s. It was bloody hard. But after that, everything got easier with bells, like way easier. And now it doesn't seem like it would be a challenge. I haven't been to an SFG one for ages, but it doesn't seem like it would be a challenge for me. But at the beginning, it was a massive challenge. And then the bodyweight one I did at your place, James. What, 2 years,
Yeah,
3
you
years
did
ago?
that with, it would have been probably 3 years ago with Fabio.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that came quite naturally though, because I'm dead light. I'm not a big guy. But then the barbell one is the one I really struggle with because I just do for some reason. I don't know if it's because of the stiffness, like the bar just is very unforgiving. So I can move and I've got good mobility and everything, but the rigidity of the bar is what I struggle with, I think.
Yeah, that's what makes these sort of, when you get certified and go through these, I think that's what makes it so wonderful, is that it's not what you're good at, it's what you have to force yourself to be good at, and you actually have to put a lot of time and energy into it. SFG compared to SFG2, SFG, I didn't understand. I'm like, why is this weekend so hard? And with these kind of get your heart rate up workouts. And I really think it's to weed out the people that aren't gonna be good representatives of Strongfirst. And I kind of understood that. Like I said, after doing it, I didn't want to do another one. But then you just kind of realize that that's kind of the threshold where, okay, you can be one of us. You're willing to put yourself through this and train for this. And it's not like something, if you put the work in, you will pass it, you will do it. It's just, you have to be willing to put some work in. And I think that's what Pavel has in mind when he built these things, is that this is you should be a professional if you pass it. And I think that's what, like you were saying with the barbell, you just kind of have to zone in on what's going to be the tough one and then start working.
Because we had John Engham on the podcast probably early 2023, I'd imagine, because I hosted him at my place for the SFB in May just gone, May 23, and I had to recert my SFB, so it was the one arm one leg push up, and I think I did the slowest one arm one leg push up in history, and he did it right at this, because we'd done the we had the flexible steel as well on the Friday, and he said, if you're here for the whole weekend, because you had the flexible steel on the Friday, then the SFB on the Saturday and the Sunday, he said you can do your strength test first thing on the Friday just to get it out the way. So we basically just kind of did that first. And I got down and I got to this sticking point, and it felt, it's like, it felt like I was at this sticking point for about 2 minutes, but it was probably like 5 seconds. And then, I got to the top and I got the thumbs up, and it was very, very slow. That's a tough one. Definitely. I know that, but like you say though, Pete, when you did the one arm, one leg, you've got it just like dialed in, haven't you, like a machine, so
it's I mean, I still train it now with Paul. I do like assisted ones, so one arm, one leg, just with this arm out with 2 fingers on the floor. And I've been doing sets of 10 of those. So I had a couple of my online guys, actually I had them because Jed was looking at doing it, because he's over 50, so he wants to be able to do the one arm, one leg. And he's done it, but he doesn't own it. So I was like, right, let's work on it. And even just putting 2 fingers out for him, I was like, that'll be easy, because like I find it all right. And he was really struggling with it. So it was like, okay, we need to we need to dial that back a bit. But it's just interesting, because like you can look at stuff and go, well, it's dead easy, and then other people struggle with it. So, but at least when you've done, or when you've got the wealth of experience that that Mark has, or like you've done these things, at least you've been there. Who was it? It's somebody was telling me about it. Their coach says it's on my hands. I've actually done, rather than the theory behind it and then going, right, here's what should work, but it doesn't work for everybody. It's actually, if you've done it yourself and someone's finding it harder than you naturally do, or they're finding something easier than you would find hard, like training someone with a barbell. For me, at least I know what it feels like. So I'm like, right, well, we can, there's always a way around it, isn't there?
That's why it was good doing the SFB actually with Fabio, because he said, didn't he? He said, I'm not a body weight guy. He goes, I'm not built for body weight. I've never done body weight, himself. But if he can do it, he knows how hard it is, so it was good because he's not like a gymnast. So it was kind of just getting with him was really good. No, that was great. Did you enjoy meeting Fabio, Mark, when you met him?
You know what? I have been wanting to meet. If you turn this board around, I actually have a quote from one of your podcasts when you had Fabio on there, and I don't know if it was a quote from him or if a quote he was saying, but he said, "You should be as strong as you look, and look as strong as you are," and that just rang true with me, and I have it up on my whiteboard over here. But I had signed up to work with Fabio at the Dome in Chicago for the SFL. And I was super psyched about that. John Ingham got me signed up for that. And then I got to meet Fabio in Phoenix and just talk to him briefly. And, I can just tell we're going to be best buddies, I look so forward to working with him in April, just because I want to learn. And I just think that it's going to be a wonderful learning experience. He is a wealth of knowledge. And just a fantastic human. I think we bowed to each other like 4 or 5 times when we met. And it's just, it was great. And I look forward to meeting him or getting to work with him in Chicago, and just super psyched for that.
Yeah. Because the last week, obviously, when we had him on, that was his third. I mean, it was his third one with us, Pete, wasn't it? I think. Yeah, but that's what I think that might be the best one, which the patience and strength that we did, where we really, and he's so great. He's such a good guy. Yeah. So in terms of coaching yourself, then, Mark, I mean, Blind Dog Strong. What's that about? Where did that name come from? And is that's a physical gym, I think, that you run, isn't it? So tell us a little bit about that. You mentioned, I think, that you've had the gym for 10 years, I think.
Yeah, actually, it's 11 now that I think about it. I started training people kind of part-time in 1996. I was working another job. I was also competing in Highland Games, and it was a really a part-time gig. And when I retired from my other job and retired from Highland Games, we opened up the gym, and we've gone through several iterations, and I think we're really hitting our stride now. It's a small. We're about 2,500 square feet. We have it's all personal training, and it's myself, and then I have another guy who works with me. I work with all the adults who are training more for strength and longevity and wellness, and he works with the younger kids who are into speed and strength and athletics. Works out really well. It's a good family of people. I'm taking, what I've learned in the past from guys like Louie Simmons and Judd Logan and these guys, and mixing it with what I've now learned from Strongfirst, and we're just getting really good results. And what's nice about it is, ever since like the pandemic, before the pandemic, we used to get, I need to lose 12 pounds for a wedding. So, these people would sign up, and that really was kind of a boring goal to have, this very short-term goal to fit into a certain size dress or whatever. And now what we're getting is, I want to be stronger. I want to be healthier. I want to be more resilient. My immune system stinks. I want to get healthier. That's speaking my language. That really fires me up to help people. We have, I'm training people from their mid-30s all the way up into their 70s now, and that just really speaks to me. It really is inspirational for me to see these people who are taking an active role in their own health and not looking to doctors and pharmacists to help them as much as they're looking to the barbell and things like proper sleep and proper nutrition and hydration and cold showers and sauna, and it's a whole new world out there nowadays, and I love every minute of it.
I think that's amazing, because I think, years ago people used to say like, oh, like jokingly, I'm training for the zombie apocalypse and all that, because they'll get the slow weak ones first and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, it was like a bit of a joke. Yeah, whatever. Everything's fine. We're all comfortable and the world's like as it is and all that. And then all of a sudden you have something like a global pandemic and it makes everyone sit up and go, actually, this could happen.
Yeah.
You know, hopefully it doesn't, obviously, and all of that. But it's like, you know, we're a fragile being in a fragile world, aren't we? So it's like, yeah, you've got to be as strong and healthy as possible. I think that's amazing. Because I've noticed that as well, especially in this country as well. We've obviously got social healthcare, but it's impossible to get appointments with doctors and things like that. And my girlfriend had a recent like neck problem, and she had to go and, you know, you're meant to get it all done, you know, on the NHS for free, the National Health Service and all that. And she ended up having to go private because she just couldn't get an appointment because it was so busy. So that's like, for me, that's kind of what I try and get across to people is like, you need to take personal responsibility for your own health because you can't rely on anyone else. Like, you know, you used to be able to a certain extent, but now it's like, you know, it's backed up. So
Yeah,
I love that.
And you know, the healthcare system here is private, but I can't talk about how great it is. It's, you know, you get good doctors and bad doctors, and you have major issues with our healthcare system, and you know, it's all run by the pharmaceutical companies, and it's Dana White said it the best. Dana was talking a few weeks ago about his health turnaround, and said he's never going to go to a doctor again for his general health. You know, if he needs a surgery or he breaks his arm, but otherwise, you know, he's on. He knows he's on his own. He's got to figure out ways to fix his own health, which he's gone through Gary Brecka, and they've fixed his health. But that's making its run of that quote's been making its run of the internet, and it's a nightmare. We got to see the bad side of healthcare all around, I think, during the pandemic. And you know, like you just said, you got to kind of be responsible for yourself now, and you know, you're starting to see home remedies and you know, these ancient ways of dealing with people's health coming back, and I'm all for it.
Yeah. And in terms of the name of Blind Dog Strong, where did that come from, Mark? Because that's so unique, and it's so it's so unique. Where did it come from?
So I started out training people in my garage. So I used to have this little garage attached to my house, and I would have people come over, and I had this Australian cattle dog. They call them blue heelers here, who was blind as a bat. And she would come out every day when I would train people, and she would sit in the garage, and you know, sometimes she was staring at the wall. She didn't even know what she was looking at, but she was completely blind. And when my wife and I opened up the gym, we were just kind of brainstorming names, and I kind of her name was Cordelia, my dog, and I said, you know, we should name it after Cordelia and call it Blind Dog. And my wife thought it was a great idea. So we started out as Blind Dog CrossFit. My wife was a CrossFit Regionals competitor here in the States. And so we started off as Blind Dog CrossFit, and then moved to Blind Dog Gym. And now we call it Blind Dog Strong. So it's just kind of morphed like everything else over the years.
No, it's fantastic. It's really great. I'll tell you what, that's been great talking to you, Mark. It's been a really fantastic, you know, from not knowing you an hour ago to, you know, to you know, spending this time with you. And I'm sure we will speak to you again down the line, you know, and maybe hopefully one day even get to meet you in person, you know, because I used, prior to having kids, I used to come over to the States quite a lot, but I will we'll be over there again soon, hopefully, with the kids. Now they're getting a little bit older and stuff. So no, it's absolutely brilliant speaking to you. If people want to find out more, like I say, I mentioned, I think at the start, and I was showing a few people in the gym this morning. I was training people, and I was saying, oh, I've got this guy on this afternoon. Look at some of these videos, you know, and we were watching, I was showing them the videos. If people want to follow you and find out more about you and what you do, what's the best channel for you? Where are you most active?
Yeah, so I'm most active on Instagram. You can follow at mvalenti, MVALENTI 100, mvalenti 100. That's my personal page, which I can't figure out why anyone follows. I've got like 18,000 followers, but all I do is post like videos of me lifting and what book I'm reading. So, like watching the deadlift and the bench press, I guess that's the go for it. I also answer questions on there. If anybody ever has questions or wants to talk, I'm more than willing to answer DMs. And then my gym page is at Blind Dog Strong. That's just for all my gym stuff. You can check that out. And that's where I am. And guys, I really appreciate it. I love the podcast. I think the first one I ever listened to was John Ingham's podcast, matter of fact. And the ones with Fabio are amazing. And I'm so psyched to be on it. And I appreciate you guys taking the time to have me on. And thank you.
No, it's great. I said to someone yesterday, I said, "Oh, we've got Mark Valenti on from Ohio," and then they're like, "Oh, how do you know him?" And I say, "Well," I said, he listens to the podcast, and we kind of had a few messages back and forth. So it's amazing that from across the other side of the world, we're kind of connecting with people and then getting to speak to you. And and it was great because like I say, when John was over at my place, I went and picked him up from the airport in London and spent a weekend with John Ingham, and he was fantastic. And I think I'm going to see him again. Yeah, because I think I'm at the SFG 2 over here in May, and I think that's John Ingham's over here again in May. So I'll be spending a weekend with him then as well, which is great. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mark. It's been an absolute pleasure. And are you on YouTube at all? Do you have anything on YouTube, or are you mainly Instagram?
I think I'm on there, but I haven't posted anything in years. So
okay.
On Instagram. I've got a couple goals that I'll keep private for now, but I'm hoping for a pretty good deadlift here in the next couple of weeks. So look out for that. And just if you're into deadlifting, check that out.
Brilliant, excellent. Thank you so much, Pete. As we wrap up, have you got anything you'd like to say?
I've got one thing, and I saw this on Pat Flynn put this up actually. And if you write out Ohio as it would be, right, so with a capital O and then smaller case letters, it looks like a tractor.
Okay.
So there you go.
I'm gonna do it now. Ohio. Oh, it does a little bit, yeah. Okay.
So there you go. Everyone who's listening to this now will be going, hang on.
Oh, and you've even got the little dot above the eye is a like a puff of smoke or whatever. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, brilliant. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Mark, for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure to spend time with you. And thank you to all of you for listening, guys. Thank you so much. Paul McElroy is going to be on in a few weeks' time. We'll have him on, I think, sometime in February. Next week, we've got Ellie Crawley on. And the week after that, we've got Tartan Warrior. So Mac McLaren, who is a disabled strongman from Scotland. He will be on with us. So we've got lots of great guests coming up. Please do like, share, subscribe, leave a review if you're watching or listening on a platform that allows you to do so. Within the next episode, I'll outline something as well. We're actively trying to get more reviews, and we're going to kind of have a few little competitions where we'll be giving away some Health Oddity merchandise for people who quality merchandise for people who leave reviews. So we're going to kind of go with that as well. But please do go to YouTube. As always, we're trying to increase our subscribers on there. So we will be back next week for episode 179 with Ellie Crawley from Bristol. So we will see you then. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you.
Excellent. And thank you very much, Pete.
Thank you.
And he's just flipped his pen. That was good. He's got his pen back. He's happy. He's flipped his pen and he said thank you. We will see you next week for episode 179 with Ellie Crawley. Until then, bye-bye.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.